Good afternoon, everyone, or for my East Coasters, good evening. I'm so glad that you're here and joining me today. We are going to be talking about preparing for career success in 2022. And at the end of this broadcast, I'm going to provide you access to an exercise that's going to allow you to really reflect on the year that you've had and unravel some important insights that will help you think about where to direct your efforts in 2022. Before I get into the specifics of the exercise, I first would like to share a story with you about how this can really work and come to life for you. Earlier this year, around January or February, I started to work with a client named Sarah. Now, Sarah was an extremely successful corporate leader, working for a very large pharmaceutical company, and when she came to me, she was entirely burnt out. Now, this is a story we saw much too much during the pandemic, and many of us are still experiencing. Sarah was, while trying to manage the duties of a corporate leader, also had two young kids at home who no longer had daycare facilities available to them. So her and her husband were trying to juggle full time jobs while also caring for their two young kids, and by the time she reached out to me, she was literally ready to collapse. Now, prior to this, she knew that she wanted to get out of her corporate role, and she literally didn't have the energy to do so. Um, but the idea for change had been planted in her mind for quite some time. And this is usually what we see, is that change doesn't usually happen overnight. It doesn't happen quickly. It's usually a thought that's planted in your mind. And then over time, it grows and grows and grows, becomes more urgent. You identify the change you want to make, and then you make the change. What we did for Sarah is we really started to unpack why, why she was at E in her tank. And some of it was obvious and some of it wasn't. What I find with many of the clients that I work with is there are the external variables that are certainly depleting your tank, but then there are the internal things too. She had a really destructive internal narrative that she didn't realize was happening, and so we were able to turn that around so that the thoughts that she was telling herself, both consciously and unconsciously, matched the vision of where she wanted to go, which was a really important first step. That then enabled her to get clarity on where she wanted to go. Because when you're in the thick of it, when you're surrounded by emotion of unease, frustration, anger, resentment, it's really hard to get clarity on where you want to go. So it's important to put that aside first. In Sarah's case, when we were able to do that and took her through reflection exercises, very much like the kind I'm going to share with you today, that unlocked things for her. She remembered things about herself, about her skills, about her talent, about her passion, about the things that she wanted to do to make an impact, that allowed her to see the world a little bit more clearly. And with that, we were able to identify where she wanted to go in her career. It was very quickly after that. And by the way, you guys, I see this all the time. As soon as people unlock that vision of where they want to go, and start to take those steps towards networking, I see people get into the jobs that they want really, really quickly. As soon as she did that, she was actually offered a promotion, a pay raise, and a job that gave her a much better work life balance within a couple of months. So, this is absolutely doable. And it all starts with reflection. I listened to a really interesting podcast this week that I wanted to share with you all. If you have not yet heard Oprah, her Super Soul series, I hadn't yet either. And I had a long drive ahead of me. We're in the middle of remodeling and moving to a new house. So I've got this driving time that I didn't have before. And I love to fill it with podcasts. This podcast in particular, I would recommend the one from November with Paulo Coelho. Now, if you recognize his name, it's because he wrote one of the best selling books of all time, The Alchemist. What Paulo says is before he became a writer, he told everybody that he was a writer, but he didn't actually write. It wasn't until he went on this 500-mile journey where he walked 500 miles from Spain to France. It gave him time to think and reflect. During this time of thinking and reflecting, this is when he realized, wow, in order to become a writer, he should probably write a book. No, that's probably seems pretty obvious to you and to me, but to him, that was a really large insight. And it was the one that enabled him to get on the track to absolutely catapult his career. And now he is a world renowned author. He's living his dream. Had he not had that time to reflect and made that space, he might not have become the person and the professional and the successful name that he is today. Here's the thing, you all are involved in business planning every year, right? Every company who is successful does this. They look at past data, they look at future trends, they look at where the market's going, where the opportunity is. They pull together the best minds in the company and they put together plans for the upcoming year. You all spend so much time doing that. And I remember because I was in corporate for 13 years too and spent an enormous amount of time in business planning. It was a really important part of preparing for a really successful next year. Imagine if you took just a fraction of that time and did some reflecting and planning for you. Like I said, this is where the magic starts. And so I'm going to give you a tool today to help you with this. Now, the first thing that's important in carving a really successful future, so career success in 2022, is right now, what I'm guessing is if you're joining me today, you are in the space of having some pretty strong feelings about your current role. Frustration, anger, resentment. Perhaps you're burnt out. Perhaps you're just ready for something new. Perhaps you've reached the pinnacle of where you had envisioned you wanted to go in your career. You're at that senior level and you're looking around and it's just not as satisfying as you had once envisioned. This is when it's time for a new goal, and new goals come from reflecting. About 5 years ago, a lot of you know this about me, but I want to share this. I always like to share this story because it shows the power of reflection and how impactful this exercise can be in changing your career for the better. I spent 13 years in a marketing capacity and kept moving up in my career. You know, got to a point where it was really, really hard to think about walking away because my salary was so good, my stock options were so high. I was working for a company. Literally, the stock went from 40 to over 400, but I was not very happy. And it wasn't until it came to a really difficult sort of stopping point. Basically, after I announced I was pregnant, shortly after that, they asked me to move to the home office and pay out of pocket. And that's when I began to realize is not only was I not doing the work that I was really passionate about and my calling, but I was also working for a company that didn't value me as much as I valued them. And so that's when it was really became obvious that it was time to part ways. And it gave me some space and time to think and reflect. I keep coming back to that word reflection. Through that course of reflection that didn't happen overnight, it did take some time, and it also required me to ask some really key questions. That's when I had my aha that I was meant to do something else. Now, as really driven high achievers, we are trained to think that if we put all of our effort and focus into something, that it will come to us, that we will achieve it. And absolutely, that's true. You need to put effort and energy and hard work into achieving your dreams. But if you don't know what your goal is, and if you're not super clear on what the fit is for you and your unique skills, your talents, and defining what that role looks like, that's really going to enable you to honor all of your needs. You can just be on a treadmill heading towards a destination that doesn't make sense for who you are or who you want to be. When I went through that reflection exercise and uncovered, yes, coaching is the thing I want to do, what I realized is there were so many areas that I had never tuned into, um, messages that I could pick up just by reflecting, being quiet, and leaving time and space to think. This is something that you all can relate to. When is a time when you have your biggest aha moments? It's likely either when you're in the shower or you're outside walking, because your aha moments don't come from being in back to back Zoom meetings all day. Without that time to think strategically, it's really hard to have insights that are going to help you change your life for the better. Because I am so grateful for where I was 5 years ago in marketing, had that reflection, had that insight to become a coach. I've had my best year yet as a career coach. I've been so blessed and honored to work with over 100 corporate leaders and help them transition into jobs that increase their impact, their happiness, and their earning potential. I want to see more of this from all of you because it is possible. It absolutely is. And it all starts with really crystallizing what your dream is, what your vision is, and where you want to go. So, the purpose of today is to give you access to this exercise that's going to allow you to pull out those insights from 2021. Oh, what a year it has been on the heels of the pandemic. We've learned a lot about ourselves. We've learned a lot about the world. We've learned a lot about how to adapt as a society to working from home. It is time to think about all the things that you've been exposed to, all the things you did this year, and all the things that you cycled through, and make sense of all of that so that you can have some really powerful insights, some questions, some new visions, new dreams emerge. So here's the website, www.swim-against.com/reflection. This is where you can access your free year-end exercise. Now there's 2 documents in here. The first document is one that will help you reflect on your life. So if you wanted to expand this from career into life, I wanted to open that up to you all because as we all know, the two are very much intertwined and very much impact each other. And so there's an exercise in there if you wanted to start with life reflection. If you wanted to just go straight to career reflection, there's an exercise in there that will enable you to do that as well. So please take some time to sit down and answer these questions. And honestly, it doesn't take too long. I did it today because I always like to use the exercises that I share with you all. And I just went outside. I went on my deck. I was in the elements. I turned off my phone. I turned off technology. And here's what's so funny: my internet actually went out. So not only was I not able to look at my email, I literally like didn't have access. It was the best thing that could have happened because I did have some really interesting ahas as I reflected on my past year. And I'm confident that you will have the same insights just by carving out a little time. Now, I'm a mom of 2 young kids, so I don't ever give you guys exercises that take a lot of time because I don't have a lot of time, and that is not realistic in the world that you and I are living in. We're all really busy professionals, and we have high dreams and high aspirations, and we have very full lives. Just taking a little bit of time to do these exercises it's going to give you some really important insights that you wouldn't have otherwise had. So check it out, swim-against.com/reflection. This is completely free. Again, I just want you all to have the same success and beauty and happiness and impact in your future career that I've been able to uncover. It's such a remarkable feeling. It is absolutely obtainable. And this is where you start. You start with reflection. By the way, if any of you all have any questions, please type them in chat. Can't tell how many of you all are live because LinkedIn Live it's not a feature that they have quite yet. But if you've got anything that's coming up for you that you want to ask me, please go ahead and just type it in the chat. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Here's what's coming next. So over the next week, I encourage you to go through this exercise. And again, it's not going to take too long. Set aside, I think it took me about 30-45 minutes. Silence your phone. Just, let the family know, hey, I need some private time. Close the door if you've got one. For me, I just prefer to be outside, be in the elements, be around trees, be around sunshine, wherever is the space where you thrive. And you can really, really give this exercise the time and space that it needs. I mean, you do this for hours for your company. I definitely encourage you to just take 30 to 45 minutes to do it for you. What we're going to do next week at this time, same place, same time, LinkedIn Live, as an adjunct exercise to the reflection, I'm going to give you access now to an exercise that will allow you to take those reflections and turn them into targets or dreams, visions that you want for the next year. So, very much like we heard Paolo did, very much like I did, very much like Sarah did, these visions, these reflections will take you to the target role, the target future, the target job that you want to have if you let them and if you give the time and space for enable that to happen. Before we close, I wanted to share one more story that I found very inspiring. There's just so many examples of this if you start searching, of people who reflected, put a vision out into the world, and then achieved a dream that they didn't think was possible. This is a really good one. You might have heard this before. Jim Carrey, when he was a starving artist and trying to make it as an actor in Hollywood, he was just one of the many. He was totally broke. He had no money. He went to audition after audition and kept getting rejected. He did two things. The night before he met people, he envisioned the director saying things like, "Oh, I really like your vision. Oh, I really like your presence." And he said, that just actually made me feel better. So if there are things that you can do as you think about the next step to just make you feel better, like visioning an ideal outcome, this will impact the energy that you give off when you show up and you do go to strive for that thing you're shooting for. The other thing that Jim Carrey did, which is really interesting, I never knew this about him before he was rich and famous, before anybody knew about him, before he became a household name, he wrote a check to himself for $10 million. And it was 3 to 5 years. He doesn't remember it was 3 to 5 years prior to Thanksgiving of 1995. Yes, November 1995. In November of 1995, he got cast in a little known movie called Dumb and Dumber, and he got paid $10 million for that role. $10 million was the amount that he had put on that check that he sent to himself for acting services. 3 to 5 years later, he was paid $10 million for acting. So, you guys, this stuff works. It works. So, I'm so excited to hear what happens for you all when you go through your reflection exercise. And then the next exercise that I'm going to give you next week, that's going to enable you to take those reflections and plan for your upcoming year. I wish you all the best for career success in 2022. If this is something that you've been interested in and you resonate with this and you want to take it a step further, I am still accepting applications for career and or leadership coaching for the year. I'm about to close my doors for the year because it's been a really successful year, and I want to make sure that my current clients are appropriately supported. But I do have spots for a couple more clients who are ready to go on this journey to greater career happiness, impact, and earning potential. So if that's you, and this is something that you want to do along with a coach who's helped over 100 corporate leaders do the same, you can go ahead and apply for a career discovery session here, swim-against.com/discovery. I don't accept everybody. I'm looking for the right fit, people who are really going to thrive through the process that I take my clients through. But if through the discovery application, it looks like you might be a good fit, we'll set up time to chat, make sure that we have a connection, and we'll get you going on this journey to greater career happiness, impact, and earning potential. Thank you all for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you next week as we take these reflections and we turn them into goals for 2022, the year of you.